in from. If you have a reduces group, put the name of your group there. If you don't have a reduces group, no problem whatsoever. But either way, if you could just introduce yourself on the chat, I'll do the same. Okay, great. And just while people are coming in, just maybe I'll remind you about why this group exists. Well, actually, Yayoi brought us together to form this group a few years ago when we realized that there were a few of us sprouting up around the country with reduces groups, and it can be hard to organize locally. And we wanted people to have a place they could go to come together, exchange ideas, encourage each other. So this is meant to be a really relaxed space, but also a meaningful space where organizers and people who are interested in organizing or just supporters can hear really inspiring speakers like the one we have this evening, connect with others doing similar work or interested in doing similar work, and hopefully leave the meeting with renewed energy. And we always leave time at the end for the breakout social. Uh, we're always short on time for that, but I really encourage you, if you can, to stay for that because it's a chance for us to talk in smaller groups, breakout groups, and then we'll come back together briefly just to exchange ideas about what's going on. We've got a couple prompts this evening that you can use to get the conversation going. I find in these groups a lot of times it's just introductions and exchanging ideas of what's going well, what are the challenges. So your group can use the time however you like. And as people are joining, I'll just say again, if you wouldn't mind just putting your name and where you're calling in from in the chat. And if you have a reduces group, just throw in the name of the group so we know who's here. And I see a few groups. Um, we have New York City reduces, of course, and Zero Waste Ithaca, of course. And I think I may be missing some earlier. But as you can see, not everyone, oh, Austin reuse, yay. Welcome, Austin. And as you can see in the chat, many folks are not part of a zero waste group or a DC, I'm sorry, a reduces group, and that's totally fine because we're here so that we can encourage one another. Okay, so we're a few minutes in now. I think we've still got a few streaming people coming in. Let me just give it 30 seconds more. And we've got 36 people on the line. So I think maybe we could go ahead and move to the agenda for the evening. And if someone can just help move over to thank you, the agenda slide. Okay, so as always, we'll have some announcements. Yayoi will lead us through. We've got every time we try to do a local program spotlight, and this evening that will be, or this afternoon, that will be Austin Reduces. Then we'll present our guest speaker, who I'm very excited about, and I think many of us are excited to hear Rebecca Burgess. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Okay, good. Got the thumbs up. And then, as I said, we will leave some time. We'll have Q&A, but we will leave some time for the breakout social. And what we're suggesting this time, if you have nothing else you want to talk about, maybe feel free to talk about anything that you're using or repairing because you really don't want to throw it away. I'm wearing an example of that right now. And then one thing you own that has lasted a surprisingly long time. But again, if you want to use that time that we've got, about 15 minutes in your smaller groups, just to talk about the group that you have or that you aspire to have and what's going on with that, that's fantastic. And then we'll come back and wrap up. Okay, so I think we will dive into the announcements now. So I'll hand it over to Yayoi.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you to the team, and thank you so much, Rebecca, for spending time with us today. So the first item is, if you could move the slide, one slide, please. Thank you. Well, we want to stay connected, so I'd like you to, if you're on Instagram, follow us on US Reduces. We try to share a local group posting on stories. We also are on Facebook. We have Facebook page, and so please follow us there, both on at US Reduces and local groups. Folks, I know you are here today, and if you have local news about your BYO actions, please send it to us at info@usreduces.org. That's an email, and I'd appreciate it if you could send us a photo, nice photo, and like a paragraph. We are all volunteer operations, so we'd like you to help it make it as easy as possible. Anything that's ready to publish is fantastic. So if you have a local news, please send it to info@usreduces.org. And we also have Google Groups for the people who are started to work on the BYO initiatives at your local area. And also, we also have a Facebook group. So get started at usreduces.org/get-started. It has all the information, so please join us, and let's have fun. Okay, move on to the next. Okay, quick announcement is Hira the Earth, our previous guest speaker. She's an eco rapper from Brooklyn, New York. She released a reel for us with the theme of Bring Your Own Container, and her reel hit 100,000 views in a month. I think that's like a fantastic accomplishment. It's quite amazing for an advocacy reel, and it's really, really fun. If you haven't checked it out, please do check it out. I'm busy talking right now, so I will drop the link later. But I really, really highly recommend everybody to check out that reel. It's awesome, and it's still growing. I think right now it's like 109,000 views, and we are so excited about it. This shows that BYO is not fringe, and everybody, the public is ready, and policy needs to catch up. In the United States, we have BYO containers for food takeout is allowed in California, Oregon, Illinois, and Maine. And we need better legislations. So we are ready. So the policy needs to really catch up. Please move on to the next slide. Thank you. So I kind of wanted to give a quick reminder of why the BYO matters, because it is often considered fringe and over lesser, easy option. It is not easy. I think it's quite fundamental. For reuse culture to take off, BYO is it's like a scaffolding where people do not uh, value BYO, uh, we will not have a true reuse culture. The BYO is important for all of these reasons listed. BYO helps shift people from passive consumption to active participation. BYO is one of the most democratic forms of reuse. BYO supports neighborhood business without requiring extensive proprietary systems. BYO builds habits, expectations, social permission for reuse. BYO is low cost, low tech, and immediately usable. BYO keeps reuse from being captured by corporations, which is really, really, really important. BYO is not just about containers, it's about who controls the terms of our everyday material life. So BYO is not a dark horse, but it is really the I think it's the powerhouse of the reuse. So that's why we are here. Thank you. Amy, if you could move on to the next slide. Okay, heads up. Next meeting is going to be June 2nd. Please register now. And we have another amazing guest, Miriam Gordon of the Story of Stuff Project. And she's like architect of California's pioneering BYO law in 2019. So she's going to share what it was like to try to pass that law. Um, it's going to be really, really enriching and very interesting. So please register for the meeting now. And save the date on your calendar for the first Tuesday of every other month. Okay, thank you. The next is more scheduled guest speakers. August, we're going to have another amazing guest, Doom Moon from Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives. She is fantastic. And she's in South Korea. And but she used to work in Berkeley, California. And she's just really, really amazing and very knowledgeable person. And she's going to speak about bioplastics, so-called compostables and biodegradables. There are a lot of confusions, and she's going to dispel some myth around that type of plastic is what it is. And so she's going to talk about that. And October, we will have a really wonderful guest from Center for Biological Diversity. They have a special project called Simplify Holidays. And that project is having a really nice Instagram page that reminds us about what we can do to reduce waste at each holiday. And I recommend if you're on Instagram that you follow it. I'm sure they have some accounts on other platforms. It's a really nice reminders, and they suggested that they present in October so that we can get ready for Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the holidays in December's and going forward. So please look forward to them. Okay. Local groups spotlight. Yes. Dawn and Erin from Austin Reduces in Texas is going to share with us about something really exciting that's happening there. Dawn, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, and Erin's here with us too. Erin, do you want to say hi?
Yes, please take it away.
Okay. Okay, great.
Hi. Computer troubles.
There's
Okay.
Erin. Cool. Well, I originally was gonna just share our screen, but I don't have access to do that, so I'm just gonna put our website in the chat.
It's yeah, go ahead.
But basically, my name is Dawn Rodriguez. I'm the founder of a local nonprofit in Austin, and basically, I'm sorry.
I think you can put up the site now. Should we?
Oh, can I now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just kind of want to give you a very high overview, more or less to inspire anyone who's just kind of at like a a standstill of where you want to be or what you want to do. So the Austin Reuse Coalition came together because my nonprofit Into the Sea and a few others participated in Five Gyres Trash Blitz. And we had these really wonderful comprehensive reports. And we kind of had done it in a few different cities and did a little bit of copy and paste. And then we had these wonderful reports of all this incredible trash data. And we said, okay, what are we going to do with this? And we said, well, we live in Texas, or we all did at that time. And we're probably not going to make much progress with policy. And to give you some background there, Austin has a ban on bans. So we did try to do a ban on bags a few years ago, and the Texas government said, you know what, we're actually putting a ban on bans. So policy was just not in our wheelhouse at that time. We just didn't have capacity to fight the man for it. So we said, okay, why don't we move towards culture change? So that's when we collaborated on the Austin Reuse Coalition. And now the Austin Reuse Coalition has really kind of created this life of its own. We've got an incredible team of volunteers, and it has had several strategy sessions, and it has built off on several different committees. One of the committees we're here to talk to you guys about and get your perspective on, because we're kind of at a what's next phase, and that's why I had initially reached out. But before I do that, I'll just share. My little nonprofit had some high school interns coming, and we said, okay, what are we going to do with these interns for 6 weeks? And we had seen the sticker campaign before, and we were like, yeah, that's a perfect project. Throw them on the sticker campaign. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, in 6 weeks, they really grew this. They created and grew the sticker campaign. They created a spreadsheet and messaging and a sticker Canva template, and they presented to the coalition and kind of did a pass off. Okay, coalition, this is what we've already done. Continue the momentum. And that's a little bit about how the sticker campaign got started. And then, Erin, I would love for you to share how it's kind of taken off since then.
Yeah. So I think the interns came, it was before my time. So what, a year and a half, 2 years ago, and basically canvassed, got this Excel of a bunch of shops. And from there, when I believe one of our coalition members, Nancy, spoke to you in June of last
Your
year.
screen's still sharing.
Oh, yes. And at the
Thank
time,
you.
when Nancy spoke to you guys in June of last year, we had about 17 shops uh, who had the sticker, and happy to report that, and I joined probably in the fall. So I've been part of this kind of wave that since then we have 112 coffee shops with our BYO sticker. So we passed that 100 shop mark, and it's been a huge, wonderful landmark for us. And that's why Dawn has mentioned we're kind of at this phase 2 now. We've basically touched almost all coffee shops and food trucks. We have a lot of coffee trucks here too as well that we've approached. That are independent. So the ones we haven't are more of your Starbucks or big franchises that we haven't approached. So we're trying to figure out, what does the phase 2 look like? Is it how do we kind of double down on what the reuse behavior we want to see demonstrated looks like? How do we get more engaged? And maybe in the breakout sessions, we can talk more about that. If other folks and other groups have ideas or things that you guys have done too, that have worked for you.
And then just to kind of bring that home, also, sorry about that, guys. My husband's in a different country right now traveling, so I shouldn't have. Sorry. Thanks for letting me know about that, Amy. Also with the sticker campaign, there's a question that comes back to like where's the balance? Because we're putting not only money, but we're putting a lot of waste out there with the sticker. We're it's kind of developed into these giveaway stickers, and then what I'm curious, coming to you all from your perspective, like what do you feel about this return on awareness and culture change versus not kind of going against what we're saying and creating more waste that isn't that isn't reusable. So I guess I'll just plant that seed too, because I'd love to hear everyone's opinion on that.
Great. Thank you both so much for presenting. And I want to see if there are any questions or responses to the questions you were asking. I just want to say a couple quick things in response based on my own experience. I'm the founder of DC Reduces. 100 stickers is such a wow. I mean, I'm just floored. And I want to ask again how quickly you did that. It just sounds like you had an army or else really impressive sales to Austin businesses. But anyway, congratulations. That's amazing. And I also struggle with phase two. We are at 65 businesses in DC, and I think as soon as you start to see momentum build, I think you wonder, so where's the difference? Are you starting to see people make changes in their behaviors? And I'm not sure I see that yet, if I'm very honest. And I do have some ideas and some things I've implemented, but I think it's a great topic for the smaller group. But I do want to just open it up for a few minutes and ask if anyone wants to respond to Dawn and Aaron, or if anyone wants to share their own experience with the bigger group right now. And we've got 2 or 3 minutes to do this before we'll move into the speaker segment of the evening. I'm looking, and because people aren't chiming in, if you do want to just ask something, you can unmute yourself and go for it. Okay. And if not, that's okay too. Dawn, it sounded like you wanted to say something in response. So I'll just see if you wanted to respond. No? Okay. Okay.
No, just thank you guys again. Oh, just Sarah, I think we need to think a different way to promote the reuse and BYO campaign. It makes the message of cutting pollution confusing. That's where I'm at kind of with it too. And I don't want to like poo-poo the efforts by any means. And it does, it's like feeling a little like, oh, but we're just putting more waste in there.
Sorry, I'm just going to chime in really quickly. Oh,
Please.
Seema wanted to say something. Go ahead, Seema. And I do have a view on the sticker waste thing, but go ahead, Seema, and then Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn and Erin. This is really exciting that you've been able to reach that many businesses. Um, I would say that I think on one of these calls, maybe it was last year, and I don't remember which group it was, but they weren't doing the stickers. They took a different approach where they had these wooden stands, and then they had a BYO card that would be on the station. And I think their reasoning was the same. They were trying to go away from plastic, but they still wanted to give a message. And I was just looking at your website and I see you have multiple stickers. Maybe, you have the ones on the door, but then you have ones also that people can put on their cups. So I'm wondering if maybe the next phase is maybe, reducing that bit where people put those stickers on their cups and maybe it's the ones that just go on the business's window. But regardless of that, I think you guys that it's amazing that you've reached as many businesses as you have.
Thank you, Seema. Thank you for that.
Sharon, did you want to ask a question as well?
Sure.
And thank you, Seema. Yeah.
I'm Sharon Silverman. I'm here in Brooklyn. I serve on the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and I chair the textile committee because I have a really long background in textiles. Excuse me. My idea for you guys is get kids involved. Kids, if you can create some sort of fair or hop in at something that's happening that's progressive in Austin sometime somewhere, even during spring break, it could be an activity that the kids can decorate mugs. They can say my reusable mug or something, just come up with creative graphic sort of ideas and have some permanent markers or look up ways to transfer various prints or things to a mug, but go out to like a typical reuse place like Goodwill and Salvation Army and say, would you donate a bunch of ceramic mugs? and maybe the kids decorate them for their mother for Mother's Day, right? To take to the office, or their fathers. And it spreads. It often and I've participated in studies to reduce plastic in cafeterias in New York City, which there are 2,200 public schools in New York City. So a small action can make a big impact here. But kids will embarrass their parents. They'll take home the lesson they learned and say, "Why don't we do this?" And it's sort of a great way to extend things. Plus, you know, if the kids also take home, "Well, mom, you have a store. Can you do this in your store?" That kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's my idea. Go through the kids because they're the next generation anyway, um, and do something publicly where people really see it and they can take a mug and make it their permanent, always bring back my cup mug.
Yeah. Well, I would second that. The kids are a great vehicle. I mean, a great way to get change to the adults. I have my own view is that the stickers are not single use unless they're really poorly put on the on the store, and then you got to take them down and use another one. That's never happened to me, but so the same stickers that I bought 3 years ago are still, for the most part, on the windows. So I draw the distinction there. It's plastic though, and I try to not buy plastic. So I understand the contradiction, but I'd like to think because of the cause and the amount of plastic, I don't know. I've gotten comfortable with it. Let's say that. Okay, I think we should continue this conversation because you've really, I think, opened up a lot of great thinking and ideas. But I do want to now move to our to introduce our guest speaker, Rebecca Burgess, and I'm going to introduce her formally, and then I need to tell a small world story. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So we're really glad to welcome Rebecca Burgess. She's the founder and executive director of Fibershed, and she's the author of 3 books, Fibershed, Growing a Movement of Farmers, Fashion Activists. Oh no, 2 books. No, that's one, I think. Makers for a New Tech. No, that's one book, right? And Makers for a New Textile Economy is part of the subtitle. And another book, Harvesting Color. I love that title. Fibershed is both a concept and an organization, a way of thinking about regional textile systems, much like a watershed helps us think about regional water systems. And that connects really beautifully with BYO because we ask ourselves how we can reduce waste, plastic, and rebuild everyday systems in a more local and ecological way. Fibershed, as a nonprofit, has helped reimagine clothing through regional cyber fiber systems grounded in soil health, ecology, and local production. Rebecca is widely known for helping bring the soil to soil textile vision into public conversation. So I don't know about you, but I think there are a lot of people very excited to hear what Rebecca has to say. My small world story, and maybe it's not that small, but if any of you have seen Plastic Detox on Netflix, I saw it a couple weeks ago. It's, I think, the best anti-plastic movie I've seen so far. And at the end, there's an interview with a fashion company called California Cloth Foundry, I believe. And I went online and I ordered something from them right after I saw the movie. I wanted to support them. I also needed a new pair of sweatpants. And they came and they were too small. And at the exact same time as I was prepping for this meeting and I was looking up Rebecca's bio, I was getting an email from the head of the company as I was trying to return these sweatpants. She had looked up my Instagram account and saw that Rebecca was going to be speaking, and she said, "Oh my goodness, I see you're hosting Rebecca Burgess. She's one of my favorite people." So anyway, I a little bit of a small story, although I think those of us in the plastic world, maybe those connections are just always there waiting to happen. So without further ado, Rebecca, I turn it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
That was such a sweet intro. And hello to Lydia Lent from California Cloth Foundry, and I highly recommend the documentary for those who haven't seen it yet. It's spectacular, and I agree with you, Stephanie. It's going to probably be one of the more powerful documents we can refer to help change the tide on this. I'm going to share screen. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see that okay? Yeah? Okay. Thanks, Dawn. All right. So as it was mentioned in the introduction, the concept of a fiber shed is analogous to a watershed or a food shed. That's how I was thinking about it when I coined the term. It was, there's a very clear distinction in the topography of the community that I'm from. I'm fifth generation in one watershed. So my family's been in this watershed since the early 1890s. And the continuity of place, I think, informed quite a bit of the thinking and approach that I've had to life, but also, to think about the necessities of our existence and how we are able to interact with the biosphere as a keystone species, that is the human role, and how we interact with these ecosystems to have reciprocity, to regenerate systems and to also get what we need for food, for fiber, for water. And when you're in a closed geography, a tightly knit watershed or a food shed that you're very conscious of, it does bring those learnings up very quickly about what regenerates or what desecrates landscapes. And it's that feedback loop of consumption and viewing the effects of consumption immediately that I think are really important. Humans we're sensory beings. We need to see, we need to hear, we need to taste, we need to feel our surroundings to understand them. And so these long distance supply chains, or even watersheds like in California, where the south of the state is dependent on a watershed that the Karuk and the Yurok and um, many other smaller tribal communities are relying upon for their salmon. We're shipping most of that water south. So we have this disaggregation of awareness in California's watersheds that's pretty stark. So I grew up with that awareness. And I also grew up in a food shed that's pretty healthy. We're losing a lot of our small farms, but at the same time, I still am a champion for small decentralized agriculture as a source for our food system. And so Fibershed just, it was an evolution of thought around that. And it was more than a term. It was very much defined in 2009, sitting in an airport. Just even the fact sitting in an airport was its own kind of challenge for me because of the fuel use and just the effects that we have from how we ship our bodies around and transport our bodies. But in 2009, Obama was sending troops into Afghanistan. And it had also become apparent to me that the pipeline for oil out of Afghanistan through Azerbaijan and out into a port was a huge part of our role, anywhere in the Middle East, or a better term, a region that we call the Middle East. That's a colonial term, I realize. But I was like, you know what, I'm kind of done with this fossil carbon. And, I think at this point, we probably are all sitting here going, I think we're kind of done with the fossil carbon and what it does to our society. And I realized that I was writing a book about natural dyes and biosphere-based color at the time. I was writing Harvesting Color, and I had a really generous space in my life to, maybe only have one day job and get to write this book. And I had more like three prior to that. And realized when I looked down at my clothing that I was wearing, I was going to go study in Wyoming with an ethnobotanist. And I'm looking at my own clothing. I've got stretch in my corduroys. I've got a t-shirt that has some spandex in it. I'm sitting on a chair made of plastic. The carpet of the airport is plastic. The table to put my coffee, plastic. And I'm surrounded by the material that I'm conscious of is driving war. And I was just like, you know what? I think I'm done. I'm just gonna try something very different. Um, and so I came home and I thought, if this book is about to go to print and I am not necessarily living a life that completely honors some of the values I'm espousing in the book. And I had, um, so I made up, kind of a personal challenge to treat my own skin as a guinea pig for this experiment of like wearing clothing whose fiber, dye, and labor would all be within 150 miles of my front door. And I'll get into a little bit of the visuals around this wardrobe challenge, and the discoveries that occurred within that. But I wanted to frame some of when some people hear about the wardrobe challenge, they feel very much like, well, that's interesting, but I would never do that. And that's totally understandable and it wasn't meant to be an analog for other people's lives. It was really personal. It was really an exploration. But what I do think we can all view and understand and change course on collectively on this call and in our communities is our relationship with synthetic materials that come from fossil carbon or the lithosphere. And here's an example. This graph tracks really the rise of polyester, which is it's formed through a byproduct of fracked gas. We also know that China produces 2/3 of the world's polyester, and a lot of the core material comes out of places like Iran and Russia, is transported to China, and then filaments are made and knit and woven into most of our clothes. In fact, around 66 to 70% of the global fiber diet is plastic. And it's from these geographies and it's from these production processes and supply chains. But it wasn't always like that. So if you see in the early 2000s, this new business model emerges that we've come to know as fast fashion around 2002, 2003. And H&M opens in New York. And the only way to deliver an $8 t-shirt is to put dollar kilo plastic in a cotton t-shirt. Cotton is going to be, or kilogram, a cotton's going to be $5 to $6 a kilogram. If it's ginned and cleaned, wool, maybe $7, $9. The only way to drive that kind of fast consumption is to put a cheap, so-called cheap, it's not cheap globally for the impacts, but it's cheap upon price point into the material. So all of a sudden, fast fashion hits the scene. This is even before Shein and Temu hit the scene. And all of a sudden, we see polyester starting to spike. So really, our consumption, 100 billion garments a year are made. There's 8.5 billion people or somewhat around there on the planet. We are completely overproducing, and we're able to do these high volume overproduction runs because of fossil carbon. And prior to that, I think about my lifetime, born in 1977, I have a whole adult life without fast fashion. And so, if we think about how we could return to something that is more heirloom quality, that is made of natural fiber, it's actually accessible to us because the history on fast fashion is very short. And so there are policy maneuvers we could put in place. Europe is doing some excellent work on this. Like in France, they have banned advertising of fast fashion, for instance. There's plenty we can do around turning the tide on this and turning that tide towards something more soil to soil, which is our clothing should be a nutrient for the biosphere. It should be a nutrient for the pedosphere in particular. Of all the carbon pools on the planet, the soil needs carbon. We've lost carbon stocks in our agricultural soils. In California, we've lost half the carbon in our grazed systems due to the annualization of the grasslands, meaning our perennial bunch grasses disappeared at the time of colonization due to overgrazing. But the way we bring grazing back to the system, we can actually enhance perennial grasses. In our croplands, we've lost, in some cases, 100 to 200% of that carbon has just disappeared. and it's oxidized through tillage and through the use of heavy chemistries. So we know we need to recarbonize our pedosphere to create natural, healthy fertility cycles that help us separate ourselves from the synthetic chemistries. I mean, you probably are aware of this, but like a lot of the pesticides and herbicides that we use, they are fossil carbon based. Synthetic nitrogen is, it's also coming from the Strait of Hormuz, as much as the stuff that's fueling our cars. So, soil to soil has a lot of work to be done in it because of the way we do modern agriculture. But at the same time, the vision is that the clothing at the end of life, when you can no longer wear it, it can no longer become a rag to clean your floor, it can no longer serve any utilitarian purpose in your material life. It should be able to enter a carbon pool, which it is now. It's naturally going airborne through incineration. It's going into oceans. These are both carbon pools, or it's ending up in waste dumps, and leachate is, we have all those problems. So the inevitability of our clothing hitting a carbon pool is what it is. So let's make sure we're conscious about when that waste material enters a carbon pool, like the pedosphere, and make sure our clothing can be eaten by microbes. So that's the premise of soil to soil. And this is a very kind of like small scale version of what that could look like. And then the visuals I was going to show just of the 1 year wardrobe challenge. This is a farmer and a designer, a student from SF State, Casey Depp, who worked with this woman, Robin Lind, with these beautiful conservation livestock breed sheep. And I was trained as a natural or self-trained natural dyer. But when I realized that when we remove ourselves even from the idea of using heat and water and either a biosphere-based material or an azo dye, actually we don't need a lot of the processing to create color if we rely on nature's colors. Much of the cotton and the wool, flax, especially cotton and wool, can be grown naturally without genetic engineering in beautiful tones. These sheep are actually from biblical times. They're called Jacob's sheep because they are named after Jacob's multicolor coat in the Bible. So it's a very, very ancient breed, and the females have horns. So that's what you're seeing the ewes there. And you can see the color of the shirt, that shirt sweater that Casey made. I wore that every day for 4 months in the winter. Didn't even need to wash it. Needed no hot water, didn't need energy. The wool is antimicrobial. It helps you regulate your temperature. If you're cold, it helps you warm up. If you're too hot, it helps you cool off. People always say, like, can you wear wool in the summer? And like, sheep wear wool in the summer. So we can too. And the other part of the project that was really inspiring was bringing urban design community, like a lot of students I worked with to create the wardrobe. I brought them to farms within this 150 miles and built relationships between urban and rural. And those relationships precipitated the garments that were then worn. And this is Catherine Jolda. She's a felter. You can see she doesn't cut or sew anything. She just actually uses her physical body and soap and water to construct a composite out of wool and alpaca. And this alpaca is blind, and that is why that alpaca is getting so close to her, because they need to communicate not through visual, through smell. And this is another example of all the natural dyes I was doing as part of the wardrobe challenge. But again, I started to learn I didn't need all those dyes. But here are some of the dyes from native California species. The sweater I'm wearing there is made out of wool I spun from a farm just down the road from me, dyed in coffee berry, Rhamnus californica. It's also a medicinal. And all of the colors I'm holding are from a series of plants that I've either cultivated in my garden or species that I've harvested from areas where I have tending regimes. And so, just a note, when you look at some of the clothes in that wardrobe, you think they're a little bulky. Why is that? Why are these natural fibers looking a little chunky, a little quaint? And it's because of the manufacturing. The fiber itself that we grow in our region, this is what I discovered, was that California, my home community, north of San Francisco, California is the second largest wool producer with Texas, we kind of like go between Texas and California for rivaling on largest wool producer in the country. Two-thirds of the wool rivals the quality coming out of New Zealand and Australia. So there was more wool than I could have dressed, half the state like that if we'd had the manufacturing equipment. So here's an example of the kind of equipment I was finding. Equipment from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. No modernization had occurred since the 1960s. And the people running these mills are mom and pop businesses that had very low volume. And so here's how that wool is spun on a 1962 Witten machine. And all the people spinning for us, there was only a couple of these mom and pop shops throughout the state. And it would take, 6 months to get a little bit of yarn. And so I found that the issue was not the farming community's lack of production. It wasn't that we don't have enough natural fiber. It's actually that we're not in California very close to some of the supply chains that are most known in the world in China, in mainland China and Vietnam. Our distance from those supply chains, our wool production is not as close as like New Zealand's wool production and Australia's wool production. So in a way, we were being left out of the global market, but our volumes were quite high. And so we were always piecing together these value chains, but really, and that's another example of our wool, incredibly soft. We actually in California grow a lot of a French merino breed called Rambouillet, and that's what this is. And so in this work, I've jettisoned to working with students a lot. This is a young woman from Sac State who was doing her capstone project, reminiscent of how her grandmother taught her to sew. We took some of that wool from the 1 Year Wardrobe Challenge, and I found a way to get investment in some mills. So we started to see micro mills started to pop up. There were 3 mills that we were able to do some integrated capital and work to get some investment, and we made cloth. So we could finally actually make a textile. This is a woven textile. It was made in Sacramento, near where this woman went to school. She dyed it in oak galls and iron and sewed it, and all of her dye experiments are behind her there, with weedy invasive species, more capstone work and journaling. We did a lot of work with students to just have them explore these materials and connect to the land. We took everyone to the ranches, we took everyone to the mills. They got to see the entire Fibershed system. And then we took all of the material from the floor of their sewing rooms and we composted it. And so we actually turned our scraps, you could call it post-industrial waste, into soil. And then that soil went into our dye gardens, and we grew all of our dye plants with that soil. And we also have a lot of cotton in California. And so we were also finding ways to piece together supply chains that had to be US based. We don't have enough supply chain in California to make all of the t-shirt. And we dyed it in avocado pits. That's what the pink is. And the orange is just like marigolds that would be growing around the tomato plants. And we would take the heads off the marigolds and make this kind of nice rusty orangey yellow color. And then we work with students, but we also work with companies. So this is Koyuchi Bedding Company. And what we've been trying, our efforts now still consist of working interpersonally, still with the student community, and bringing the brands in so that they can start to build relationships direct to farm. Because really, at the end of the day, the relationships that I and the students and the designers have to the ag community is what is foundational in how we build true cost accounting, heirloom quality textile, rebuild our mills. We have to do this through a compelling relationship with each other. And so we bring these designers into the fields, and we'll have another wool tour on May 28th. This was a couple of years ago. All the cotton we cannot use for t-shirts, we can use for bedding inserts. So this was a duvet insert. We can also use some of that lower end cotton for feminine hygiene. We can use it for pillows. So here's an example of us trying to help this cotton farmer. We actually were able to get them to remove all the neonicotinoids, all of the glyphosate, 50% reduction in synthetic nitrogen in year one. No-till, we got rid of the fungicides on the seed treatments. We got cover crop and all of these regenerative practices, animal integration. We moved sheep through the cotton field at the end of the season. And so the costs of producing cotton in this way are a little more. So we're always trying to find a brand who can marry their commitments to the land to their purchasing power so we can drive change across these landscapes. And this is Los Angeles. So some of us, if you're in, many parts of the country still have these components of the value chain, but to really make things locally, we need knitting facilities, spinning facilities. And this is Laguna in Los Angeles who does incredible work. This is where the t-shirts were knit. And then the rangeland system. So I just wanted to give you kind of an image of the sheep that graze our California hillsides. This is, and see all the colors of those animals? They make beautiful colored clothes. Those are Romdales, Corriedales, Romneys, and they do a lot of fire fuel reductions. So a lot of these annual grasses that have come in, these sheep make sure the fuel ladder is kept down. And here's the Rambouillet, the French Merino, under the wool, under the windmills. These are fields where we do a lot of, in Solano County in California, a lot of renewable energy production, and we graze the understory of that renewable energy production with sheep. And here's the wool from those hillsides on the bodies of people, undyed. So that's just what the white wool looks like. And then again, we're consistently working to regenerate our working lands. So anytime a designer works with us, they pay a tiny, maybe 10 cents more a pound, up to 50 cents more a pound. We aggregate that money and we invest it back in the farm to do things like beaver analogs, silvopastures, riparian corridor restoration, native plantings of hedgerows, rangeland seeding, pollinator strips a mile long in the Great Basin. That's what this picture is. And that's one of our Rambouillet ranches. And the goal is really to see material culture regenerating the land, right? We're so used to material culture desecrating or extracting or creating something that seems beyond repair. And that's the opposite of what we want to see. We want to see that our investment in heirloom quality textiles that will last many generations is driving carbon capture, biodiversity, better income for the farmer so they can stay on the farm. Because people who stay on farms for many generations, they know the land and they're probably the best people to handle the changes that are coming. And so we want to keep them there. And to do that, they need their economy to work. Another thing that we do is we ensure that people have access to repair. So we have a learning center and people can come if they invest in these more expensive items of clothing. We always say it's more expensive depending on how many times you wear it. So again, it's about cost per wear. And I guess you could say the same for, your reusable mug, right? You spend a little more on the mug, but it's how much you're actually using it and amortizing that cost that makes that mug worth its weight. It's the same thing we would do with sweaters or jeans. You invest in that item and you wear it frequently. So the biggest way that we can, and I guess you all are very familiar with this adage, but it's frequency and duration, right? It's how long you own something and how many times you wear it within the duration you own it that creates the impact that we want to see. So we want you to wear it a lot and we want you to own it for a long time. And that means mending is probably going to be part of the deal. And swapping, because we also know humans need novelty. I get that a lot. How did you only wear 10 items of clothing for a year and a half? Well, I just kind of had to suck it up and not really have a lot of new things, or, that was just the way it was. And I got used to it, and it really changed some deep psychological patterns I had around consumption. When I couldn't consume, it actually drove a lot more of my creativity. I had to internalize the impulse to purchase, and I had to drive that energy elsewhere. And what ended up happening is I had a lot more energy for my natural dye practice, for my sewing practice, for my ceramics practice, for my gardening and farming practice, because I wasn't as distracted by consumption. And I think that is also, a real component, a beauty of the work we're all doing is rejiggering our lives to be net contributors instead of net extractors. So swapping is one beautiful way to be part of the circular economy without really having to have money. So we have these clothing swaps a few times a year at our learning center, and they're run by high school students. They come in and help us with that. And we have family days where we have the repair stations where people come in. We call them mending bars. And then we also have children's felting stations. So kids can come in and make their own little baby sheep or whatever from wool. And then we also show people things like furoshiki, Japanese, I guess, very time-tested practice of using cloth scraps to carry books to school or to carry a bottle of wine to a dinner party you've been invited to, or clothing even wrapped up before it goes to the mending place where you're having someone help you repair your clothes. So again, instead of using plastic, how do we use scraps of fabric to carry material culture through, time and space? And then the last, I think this is the second to last slide. I just wanted to share that these communities, this is a map of these Fibershed affiliates. And so similar to this organization with your chapters, Fibersheds are working in these different parts of the world. And it's interesting, a lot of the countries that we started with are countries that have a colonial past, right? So the US, very grounded in plantation agriculture, right? European, especially if you think of the East Coast, right? South, cotton plantations, rice plantations, indigo plantations. I think we're at this point in our history where we're asking a lot of questions about our lineage, our own relationship to landscape. How do we transform the ideas of colonization into something that's, there's more equity, there's more sharing, there's more care of land, there's not all this extraction. And I think that zeitgeist is kind of populating. I see it in Australia, I see it in Canada, I see it in Europe, where people are asking, like, how do we ground into our own watersheds, our own food sheds? How do we take responsibility? Because our countries have such a pattern of going elsewhere and taking what we need from other people and leaving the environmental justice issues for other people to contend with. And the global majority countries are still facing this, right? They're still facing the destabilization from all this extraction. So I always think of it, if we as a society are gonna like repair these parts of our history, a lot of it is about endemic economies and local economies that don't take as much from others or anything from others. And so there's some patterning I see here in all these affiliates. Oh, and that was the end of the slideshow, I guess. But if you are in another part of the country, in the United States, and you're interested, you can see we just have a lot of different organizers around, and I can always connect people to affiliate organizers. Some really strong organizing happening in New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, the Rust Belt, yeah, so in Maine and the New England communities as well. So I'm going to pause there. So stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I was trying to find my reaction, hearting, clapping, whatever, but I just thank you for others who are doing that. What an inspiring life you lead and work that you do. Thank you, Yayoi, for finding Rebecca. Um, I have a lot of questions, but I want to be a good, as Yayoi calls me, guide, not moderator. And so I want to open it up and see what others may want to jump in with. And if you don't jump quickly, I'll jump in with one of my questions. But if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand or just unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay, well, I will start then. Um, I'm curious to know, thank you for that last slide that gives us a sense of where I was not familiar with the Fibershed concept before uh, you're joining us. Um, if if we want to support companies and fiber sheds in general that are working in that concept, is there a branded way to, I mean, how do you let, how does a company let us know that they are working along the lines of the principles that you have for soil to soil? Is there some kind of, like forestry stewardship council? How do we know? And then Susan has a question after that.
Well, in our region, we started a tagging system for our farmers who have direct-to-consumer businesses, and we have marketplaces twice a year. So at the very hyper local level, it becomes quite clear. But when we start to try to make these more modern garments and have to use these global supply chains, the textile industry has divorced its ownership. Like Patagonia, Nike, Walmart, they don't own the mills. And so when they start trying to build a relationship with the farm and pull that material through, we have done it with those businesses, but it's proving that the mills margins get very affected when the brand goes to the farm and wants to guarantee a price to get rid of the synthetic chemistries and clean up that system. The mill's like, wait a minute, I used to be able to buy cotton at the cheapest possible price, spin it into yarn, and sell it to you at the highest price possible.
Hmm,
So the fact that we've been introducing the brands to the soil, the mills in the middle find that difficult. And the brands are always squeezing everybody. I mean, we did a pie chart. Brands typically make 75% of the overall value of a garment. A
hmm,
farmer makes 2%, and then everybody else has to hash it out in between. So it's a very competitive, compressed, tightly, um, it's a place that's very squeaky in terms of trying to make a margin. And
right.
so even getting your t-shirt, like I always say, for us to get rid of all this toxicity in cotton, it costs 20 cents a pound. So why isn't your shirt 10 cents more? And it's because the brands have not functionally, because since the trade deals, they are just bullhorns of marketing. They don't
Hmm,
actually produce the clothing. They
yeah,
just sell it in a very compelling way. So
right.
what you're looking for is people like Lydia Went, who you ordered from. You're looking for people who have the acumen of design. Imogene and Willie out of Austin, Texas, are a great a husband and wife team. This sweater is Imogene and Willie.
Hmm,
Um, I buy from Lydia Went. I buy secondhand. There's a whole list. I have a clothing guide I can share with you.
hmm.
But
That would
I
be
try to
great.
look for and the last thing I'll say is I just look for people who are really trying to produce 100% natural fiber, if nothing else. And that's a really great starting point. Just look for 100% natural fiber. And there are some really good, there's some good companies out there that are working in the wool system. So if you aren't just looking at like the cotton is like 30% of the global fiber diet, wool is 2%. But there's companies like Ibex, I think they're out of Vermont. They used to be all American made, they're not anymore. Um, and then, oh, if you're in New York, highly recommend Laura Sansone and the New York Textile Lab, which is a project, a co-op of designers who all
Hmm,
go in and buy the fiber from the Hudson Valley, and then they collectively have it spun. And there's brands like Vincent St. James and Adirondack. Laura herself shows up at all the Beacon farmers markets, and you can buy
hmm.
sweaters and gloves and hats straight from the farms at the farmers market in New York.
Wow. Oh, incredible. It's great to hear about that. Yeah, I would personally love I'm sure others on the call would too, to get your clothing guide. But let me turn it over to Susan. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi. Um, I was wondering if you could give us a link or some kind of a reference for people in sort of the New England area and New York that we could connect with. I'm connected to a sustainable fashion brand that is using 100% natural fibers, and would love to help the brand to get more connected to like-minded people.
I can connect you with Laura Sansone. She runs the co-op for the small designers. She helps develop the yarn spec. She's an incredibly skilled yarn and textile developer. So any brand who kind of needs help pulling through the value chain, Laura is an amazing support for that. And we're about to make an alpaca denim
Really?
out of New York with some of our California cotton that we're cleaning up. We're going to combine the warp will be our California, we call it C4 cotton, and then New York alpaca. And so we're in that development stage right now. And I'll put her email address. She would love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you so much. The work is amazing. So inspiring.
Thank you. And yes, it's nice to hear. Thank you.
And Caden has a question. Go ahead, Caden. And then Sharon.
Hi, so could you talk more about the composting of all natural fiber clothes? I personally live in an urban area, so I'm wondering what's the method towards composting?
So we've been composting 100% natural fiber that or textile from post-industrial factory floor waste. And so what we're getting is small scraps that are again on the factory floor. They get swept up and sent to us. And so we're, pieces like this big, all these different little extras. We think of them as the part of the carbon ratio in a carbon nitrogen ratio. So we try to do 50% carbon. That could be lawn clippings, post-industrial textile waste, branches, trees, cover crop, whatever, and then nitrogen. So in our case, we have, well, if you're using food waste in the city, I don't know if you're composting at a scale where you're using your food waste, you don't, food waste has a lot of nitrogen in it, but we're on farm, so we use a lot of manure from horses and sheep and cows. But you could do, maybe like 20% post-industrial. I think, if you're going to compost your own shirt or whatever, because it's tattered or moths got into it and you can't use it for anything else, obviously you just got to remove the zippers, you got to remove the tags, any elastic. And this we know with microbes, if they want to start digesting stuff, they need access. So the smaller you can make a piece of material, the surface area is nice for the microbes to access. You'll decompose your compost faster if you cut your pieces up smaller. But we've put whole shirts in the compost, just takes a little longer. And we don't aerate at all. We just let things sit in our, you could do it in wire, just like hog wire round and let stuff sit for 6 months. If we turn it, we've noticed we can decompose wool and cotton in a matter of like 90 days. Like done soil.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Caden. Just a couple comments in the chat. Rebecca said, I always wondered about the toxins in dyes in textile waste when composting. I sometimes compost cotton rags, but I always wonder about colors. I don't know if you have a comment about that. And then Cecilia asked, does the cotton have to be organic or just 100% natural fiber? I don't think she's asking about composting. I think she's asking, well, I'm not sure, Cecilia. You're asking if it qualifies for to be acceptable in this construct. But anyway, maybe you could comment on Rebecca's point.
I would say, at this point, until
Oh, sorry, it's Yayoi's question to Rebecca. Sorry.
Good Good point. I mean, yes. So right now we are using an undyed 100% cotton. It doesn't have to be organic cotton. We compost that. We've taken residue tests or tested for chemistry residues on this transitional cotton, and that there are no residues on the ginned cotton. So we don't feel like our transitional cotton poses a threat to the wearer nor to the compost. Um, the dyes are being tested as we speak at UC Merced. Cornell has done research on it as well. The primary investigator at UC Merced is Dr. Rebecca Riles, and she's testing 100% natural materials and dyed in synthetic dyes. And her preliminary results are showing that the microbes are metabolizing synthetic dyes and not leaving bioaccumulating residues of heavy metal or other problematic molecular structures. But I would say the jury needs to deliberate more on some of those finishing agents. So I always look for, like, California Cloth Foundry is an example of this. If you see the plastic detox film, she is working on every nook and cranny of that value chain. She gets in those mills. She does not let them put finishing agents. She does not allow any synthetic chemistries. She wants the clothing to be literally medicinal. So it's people like that who are really creating soil to soil in a very, like, profoundly helpful way. We haven't gotten there yet with everybody, but the company I compost their post-industrial waste is called Harvest and Mill. And they sell they are like California Cloth Foundry. So really clean stuff. But we'll know more soon from UC Merced about the
Great.
dyes.
That's very helpful. Oh my gosh. Okay. I do want to give at least 10 minutes for the breakout. So I'm going to ask the next two speakers to be, next two questioners to be very brief. Sharon, go ahead, ask your question. And before you answer, Rebecca, let's let Dominic ask the question as well. Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
Hi, Rebecca. It's so nice to meet you. I chair the Textile Waste Committee for the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and I also have many, many years as a designer in the industry, having switched because I realized how unsustainable the industry is. So I work at the cross section of trying to make the industry more ethical and organic, the whole nine yards. Um, I do work with the legislators in New York, in the city and in the state. And I was wondering if you and I could have a conversation about that more in depth than what you can answer here. In a couple of weeks, I'll be going to the Textile Recycling Expo, and I was wondering if you're possibly going to be there. But I am on a panel, so I really wanted to get some of your insight.
I think one of my colleagues will be there. Let me check if it's Alex or Nico. I think is going to attend that. But I'm happy to connect with you outside of this at any time. And so, yeah, please reach out, and I'll find out who from our team is at that conference.
And how do we get in touch with you? But that's it.
Oh, yes, Stephanie and has my email address, right? Yeah.
Yayoi does, and
Yeah.
we can share it if you're comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
And
Totally fine. And a quick question on the cotton. I just think this is real, if we have just like 20 seconds. Jasara, it's so nice to see you here. You have your audience has incredible skills in this space, Jasara being one of them. The cotton water question, I just wanted to say in California, we have we have 400 specialty crops and a number of commodity crops, cotton being one of them, and it's our second lowest water user. It uses 24 inches per acre per year. Tomatoes use 36. Onions and garlic, 36 inches per acre per year. Alfalfa, 48. Almonds, 48. Pistachios, 48. So strangely, the only crop that rivals cotton in how desert adapted it is cantaloupe, 18 inches. And the genetics of cotton I don't know if this podcast is still, I did a podcast with some Pueblo folk who talked about 6,000 years of classical breeding in what is now called New Mexico. And the genetics coming out of that area, they were moving cotton through Mesoamerica, South America, up through what is now considered Arizona, New Mexico. And the genetics of a lot of that cotton is still in the cotton seeds we see today in those Western states. Yes, do we need to, like, we're overproducing. Commodity farming overproduces. We need to grow better and less because we aren't even selling all the cotton that's being grown. So even though it's a low water user, we know the Western US with the snowpack right now is in serious dire straits. California has a different watershed than the Colorado River watershed, but all to say, we do need to be careful. But again, grow less, grow it better, wear it longer. I think cotton has a really great place in our future as a desert adapted species. But yeah, just more work to be done, I think, to really perfect and hone that.
Yeah, thank you, Jusara, for asking that great question. And then Dominic, and we'll make that our last question. Go ahead, Dominic.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, uh, in your local fiber shed, how you connected the finished product into local stores, or if you're helping these farmers and spinners, I guess I don't know all the steps in the chain, um, sell their commodities to larger global markets instead.
Well, the small and mid-scale farms we work with, what our focus is building direct to consumer markets for them because that's where they make the revenue they need. It's very hard to get small and mid-scale farmers into a brick and mortar store and then have the brick and mortar be able to sell to a consumer. The margins just aren't there. So, but then when we get into the larger scale growers who have higher volume of wool or cotton, we're starting to see more flax being grown. The volumes there, um, in many cases, can be a match to the larger companies. But again, those companies have that issue I was describing around getting their mills to cooperate with them because the cost of natural fiber is more than polyester because we subsidize polyester so hugely with our taxpayer dollars. Evidence of war in Iran. $1.5 trillion military budget is so tied to fossil carbon. So if we were to change our incentives, I think you could see brick and mortar stores carrying soil to soil far more. But our incentives, our carrots and sticks are not there. We put all the carrots on polyester, no carrots anywhere else. So, but yes, you'll see like these little like sparks of interest where Nike will put out shoelaces that have our cotton, or the Gap will do a run, or the North Face will do a run. But normalizing that across their whole supply chain is going to take a different economic model. It's going to take reinvestment in manufacturing, and it's going to take some guardrails on these companies that are currently overproducing. Lots of policy. Yeah.
Lots of policy. Oh gosh, and lots of questions if we had more time. Um, I do want to honor the idea of the breakout because I know a lot of people really enjoy that, and all of us enjoy the conversations. If you can join us, Rebecca, for the 10 minutes we'll have for the breakouts, please do. We'll put you in one of the groups. But if everyone could just join me now in thanking Rebecca for a really inspiring